Okay, good morning. I'm happy to have you here today as we are going to talk about how we explore some DESE documents for core contents. So I am going to go over quickly. I'm going to try to make it 10 or 15 minutes. And then those on the call, we can ask questions afterwards. So I always like to tell you about myself. My name is Shauna Stefanchik. I founded the Mighty Network, and a little bit about my history, my two passions as a former coach and district person and principal is PLC, and I love ELA, but I've been forced to learn other core contents. Now I'm getting into social studies and part of those work groups, so I like that as well. But my passion is curriculum and assessment. And so my goal today, why I wanted to do today's webinar, is to really review the important resources that are available on the DESE webpage that can really assist teachers with the clarity and rigor of state standards. So having been a consultant now for about 7 or 8 years, one of the things I most commonly find is, and it was the same when I was in the classroom, that we're not always clear on what the standards mean. We can look at them at face value and think, oh yeah, I know what a summary is. We usually conjure up how we were taught a summary when we were in school, or we go to our resource maybe even and say, how do they define summarizing? But the problem that can get us as Missouri educators is when our students then take the Missouri assessment, we have different definitions of what a summary is. So one of the benefits of using some of the state resources today is I personally feel that we need to bridge the gap for teachers on the getting a common definition of what the standards mean and give them clarity. And even though you have great practitioners like Lucy Calkins and all these pedagogically really sound people who've written your textbook resources, they did not write those for your students to do well on the Missouri assessment, if that makes sense. So we have to bridge the gap. We want to use those resources to help kids learn mathematical thinking and to learn how to read. Those practitioners certainly develop those resources to do that. But we always need to be looking how to bridge that gap for teachers on, here is how they will be assessed with the rigor and clarity of a summary, because that's very different. All right, so that's one of the whys behind the webinar today, is that DESE has stepped up their game. They have really provided a lot of resources for teachers and leaders to be utilizing, and not everybody knows about them. So I thought I'm going to do a call, because sometimes navigating the DESE resource, we could earn a degree in that. And they recently just updated it and shifted things around. So today, these are the 5 resource and core curriculum documents I'm going to go over. And while I go over these, I'll skip away from my presentation and I'll go right into the website, and I'm going to have you watch me navigate the website, because I feel like that's the other power of just how do I manipulate the website and find these things. Sometimes even going into the search menu doesn't find them. So I'm going to lead you through where to find these today as well. And at the end, I'll do a little summary of, as you're developing curriculum, how I would integrate these documents into your curriculum development in a systematic way. So that's an overview of what we're going to do today. These are the 4 or the 5 documents that I wanted to prioritize. One, because we have the big hubbubaloo and it's the new thing, the new priority standards. That's going to be the base. They are recommended. So keeping in mind, if your district had already done that work, you definitely want to honor the priority standards your teachers have already done. But we definitely need to be reviewing the priority standards that have come out and have that in the forefront, because as you know, state assessments will be shifting to be all over the priority standards, which most of them are now, but it will be fully priority standard focused assessment. So we really need to be clear on what those priority standards are. 2, most of us probably know where these are, but we're going to talk about where the Missouri Learning Standards documents live. Now that here can be a hindrance of having the priority standards of, oh, these are the only things we need to teach. We're all still responsible for all of the Missouri Learning Standards. Those we're figuring out how we still have to cover. So I just want to make sure you know where those live. 3, and we've had these for the past 2 or 3 years, are the item specification documents. Those are the documents, and again, I'll get into them, but they're really helpful in providing some of that clarity of unwrapping the standard. Now, not all of them are as flushed out as others, right? But they're still a good starting place when you're developing assessments to make sure teachers are aware of those item specifications. 4 is one of my favorite and new and newer. It's been around now for about a year, but to make sure everyone knows about the MoLeap block resources, because these are going to be really great in providing examples of rigor for teachers. And the same with 5 on the released assessments and practice forms that have been around for years that we know, again, examples of rigor. But the state would even say that, I've even heard Sean Bates say, now you have access within DRC of the MoLeap assessment that you can give electronically or paper throughout the year. And he was saying he would use more of those items than even the release items because they're more updated. But you know, I'm still old and goody. We can still always use those old release forms, and especially the scoring guides and things found there. So those are the 5 things that I'm going to be highlighting today. So now I'm going to go ahead and just pop up. Can you give me a thumbs up? Do you see this new screen that I have up here with the DESE website? No. Okay. That's what I was afraid of, the way it was showing. So let me stop share and reshare again to make sure that you see this. So now hopefully, is DESE screen up? Perfect. Thank you. So let's start with, I was going to start with the priority standards. So anytime I go, if you're a curriculum nut, every time you come to the DESE website, you're going to want to go to this educators button, and it gives you a drop down on the left, and then you're going to want to go over to curriculum. And it's been a little slow. And again, they have moved some things around, and because of that, sometimes some of the hyperlinks aren't working. And so they're still in the process of updating all that. But anytime you go to the curriculum webpage, it's got everything you need. We're going to be able to find all those resources I talked about. One unique feature always to look at on every individual content page, if you look down here to the right, you'll see where it's got the assessment tab, which we'll look on later, but it's got all of your core contents for high school and everything: English language arts, computer science, fine arts. This is where, especially for you who is new to curriculum, this is the page you want to anchor all of your teachers. Finding that, all of the resources should be on that page, and have a coordinator that can help you with that. And on all of these pages, a unique feature they have is this quick links box, which is actually very helpful, because so you always want to look and you can see priority standards are right there. Pretty much on all of the core contents, they have a quick links box, and the most updated resources that you're going to want to know are in there. All right. And so when we go to the priority standards box and scroll down, it's going to have all 4 contents priority standards in there. Keep in mind a little bit of a review that social studies standards are the ones that are a bit different, because they are the tools of inquiry rather than content standards. So when you look at those, they're going to be things like, rather than make sure you know all the facts about Mesopotamia, it's going to say, can you use a primary source to answer a compelling question about. So it's more about having students be able to utilize resources and tools to find the answers rather than memorizing content. So that's one of the biggest difference between the priority standards, but here's the priority standards page for all of your core contents. And so what's nice is teachers, when you click on that, it's going to take you to an external page for each one of the cores. You can download, you can click this little box and see it bigger, or you can click a box and print it right from here. It's got all K through 12 priority standards on there. I think it would be nice, I know we're digital age, but I'm old, print it off for everybody, make sure they have those priority standards. And then in some of my other webinars, I've given you activities that would be helpful. You could even do with teachers to kind of reconcile of, here's what our priority standards are, here's what the new ones are saying, where do they live in our curriculum, to make sure that we're hitting those. So that's really quickly where your priority standards are. I'm going to hit the back button for a moment, and I just want to highlight a few things for you on the actual curriculum page. If you scroll down, you'll notice it talks about content meetings. It also has the coordinator for each one of the departments, and that they are very helpful. So, and they're very responsive. So if you ever have core content specific things, or the other day I needed the ELA glossary, and because of the update, it wasn't working. These folks are all amazing. I could email Debbie and she just sent me what I needed. So because they're so amazing, another opportunity that they do for you is they offer content meetings throughout the year. And they're kind of color coded here by department. And what you can do is, right now there's not too much But once they start up in August, pretty much every other month, each content, ELA, they all have their own color, ELL, they all have a content meeting, and they're about a half a day. And I think they're keeping them virtual, which can actually make it easier because we don't have to drive there. But they provide really, they'll give you all of the updates that are happening at the state, any new resources that they're adding, and they always include, so if teachers want to join, it's great too. They're really great about modeling some instructional strategies with the content as well. So if you are a director or a leader, I highly encourage going to those. One of the things I do on my network as well is I always try to give you a synopsis if you can't attend those, but I wanted to make sure you knew where they were and how to sign up for those. All right, so that's how we're going to get to all of our priority standards. And so now let's talk about if we wanted to get to our Missouri Learning Standards. Because each department has their own little link over here, I'm going to start with English Language Arts. And we're just going to do a little walkthrough. Look, here's where our quick links again. They've got some supports for remote learning. Here's a quick link right there for Missouri Learning Standards. They have information from those content meetings I referred to. If you couldn't make it, they put past resources and materials shared at those. And if you keep scrolling down, later when we talk about the Mo blocks, you'll see ELA Mo blocks available now, and there's going to be the link to that. And then what is also great, a lot of the documents, they're now, so I'll give you some ELA updates. I know they've had some work groups coming together, and I believe that they're working on some vertical progressions for the standards that they're trying to update on the page that will help people see how the standards build over time. So they're going to be adding more resources, but if you have teachers who are interested, they usually always, or you're interested in helping with some of those documents, they put that here. And then on their page, you can easily see they've got a drop down here. Here's where you're going to find all of your MLS. This is an often overlooked document. That's one of my favorites, is the ELA glossary, because again, our definitions of what those terms are different. Oh, look, they have vertical progressions up and I haven't looked at them. Why don't we just open it right now? Because I'm curious. So let's see here. Oh, you know what? I like, these have been around. We've had vertical progressions 6 through 12, but they're also working on them K through 5, which is exciting. So basically it's going to take one content concept and it's going to show you over time how that develops, which is great if you have a 9th or 10th grade kiddo who, gosh, they still can't do it. Well, you can easily look, well, what did they have to do in 6th grade? How could I back up my instruction? And you'll have that K through 5, which will be very helpful. So just some great resources there. And again, I'd always check back because they add new things, but that's where you're going to find your MLS documents. Let's go ahead and click on math, just because I want to show you how each content does it a little bit differently. So Chip's throwing us up here. He doesn't have his quick links box, but you can see he has hyperlinked some core. There's a math content hub. Again, when they have these content meetings, they're throwing all of their presentations and resources into there so you can catch up. Here's the MOLEAP blocks. You'll be able to find his priority standard links. They are doing some professional learning this summer. That's on the calendar, and he's linking it here. So your math teachers could easily see opportunities they have. And then if you scroll down here, they're going to have your MLS. So I probably don't need to go through each content, but I want you to see all of the documents I'm referring to. If you go to each content's webpage, again, here we have the quick links. It's going to hyperlink all of those things for you. And they all have a little bit a different layout and some different resources based on the coordinators and the work groups that they've had. So let's go ahead, since we're on science, one of the other things I wanted to talk about that you'll find on each one of these pages is the item specification document. So let's open up a 5th grade. I'm going to choose somebody in the middle. And just a review on the item specification. On my presentation, I mentioned this is a great document as you have your priority standards now, your recommended ones, and you're creating assessments, which I would make sure all of my assessments were around those to help prepare kids for the assessment and diving in. You would probably then want to pull up an item specification to say, okay, well, what does, and I'm out of my element here with science, but we're going to look at one of these. Develop a model to describe that matter is made of particles too small to be seen. And so you see what they've done here is they've kind of unwrapped it. They said we're going to use models to describe phenomenon. Here's some disciplinary core ideas. They do a really good job of trying to even tie in ELA, some cross-cutting concepts. See, science is deep. But what I love about these forms that you want to drive as you're using these to help with assessments, here's how these questions could be asked in a selected response, a constructed response, or a technology enhanced. That's important for teachers to know, and that the highest it'll be asked is a DOK3, not to say the assessment wouldn't have a 1 or a 2, but the highest it will go is a level 3. But even more helpful, I find, are these sample stems you can find. So it gives you a little scenario here that might be on an assessment. And they even threw in, and here's a table that students might see, and here's some follow-up questions. And then it says, hey, here's some, if you're going to be prepping kids, you might want to be using graphic organizers, diagrams, and graphs. And they even give you some possible evidence here. So this particular one is very thorough. And I think you can see even from glancing how helpful this would be as 5th grade teachers were preparing a science assessment. You could just lift this passage in this STEM into an exit slip for kids and have a really good, rigorous test question that would prepare kids for the types of things they'd see on the assessment. Not all item specifications in each content are this thorough. Sometimes I was looking at some reading foundation ones for little kids. There may not be sample stems, right? So we want to, when we have them as thorough, great. If not, your teachers will have to ad lib. But again, item specifications are a great document for teachers to be using during assessment creation. Now I want to hop over and talk about Mo blocks. So I believe, let's see if Science had it hyperlinked here in their quick links where the Missouri blocks were. Nope, I don't see it here. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to ELA because I know they referenced it. I'm going to click down here. Now, for those of you on the call, I'll also share my presentation link with you today, and I have all this hyperlinked as well. So I always create a cheat sheet of where to find these links. But let's go back to the Mo blocks and just talk about what we have here. So the goal is to have these K-12. Right now, they're still working on the K-2 piece. So they're available 3 through 5. And you'll see they're for the 4 core content: science, math, ELA, and social studies. But if you look at ELA, all of the ELA assessments, so once you get to each grade, you do this little drop down. All of them are cross-cutting to either being integrated with social studies or integrated with science, because they're really trying to do core disciplinary content integration. So all of them are integrated even though they're in ELA. But so here's one: festivals around the world. In 4th grade, we've got 3 to choose from. So I'm going to give you a cheat sheet of how I use these. I would make sure teachers know these. Again, as you're making assessments around the priority standards, I would have them open the teacher's notes, because what I love about that is it also has the student version. But when you get to the first couple pages, it gives you an overview of here are the standards that are going to be covered in this assessment. Which priority standards are being covered here, right? I'd be looking, am I going to have some examples of priority standards here? I'm going to glance through here to see. So again, speaking and it's going to have some speaking and listening on there, and R2AB I know is a big concept. And then what you can do is you can scroll through the teacher's version. It has the passages like you'll see on the student assessments, but each one of those will also be coded with the, so question 1 is going to cover this standard. Here's the DOK level. Here's the practice process. It gives you the scoring guide. So it's nice how they really calibrate everything for you. So the curriculum part of me likes how it breaks it down on that teacher page. But let's go back and we'll also look at the student packet. So again, these Mo blocks were originally intended not for assessment, but to help with instruction, because especially at K through 5, they're concerned we really need to be teaching more social studies and science, but not everybody has textbooks for that. So let's provide some sources for people that can provide some of that textual content for social studies and science. So look, this has festivals around the world and it's source 1. So as you're making, one of the hardest things for ELA teachers is to find passages. Could they use a passage from here to teach a mini lesson? Yes. You could piecemeal this Mo block. Now look, we have a graphic, and we have a story about Kwanzaa for source 2. Source 3, let's go here, Powder of Art. So now we've got another little nonfiction story that is developmentally appropriate for 4th grade, and source 4. So what's great they've done here too, we've got 4 different sources, but they're all integrated. And so now we have some simple, so look at the rigor, right? When I talked about these help with teachers understanding the rigor, complete the table about source 1 and put a check in the correct box next to the statement to show whether it's a fact or opinion. One of the first things I'm thinking as a curriculum consultant when I go in, when we teach fact and opinion, how many times do we see it asked like this? This is why our kids don't always do well on the test, right? Because we'll ask it, we'll do a multiple choice, or maybe we have kids write out the fact or opinion. And I'm not saying not to do those things, but the way this question is formatted would really increase the rigor and throw kids off from how we traditionally teach it. So I think it's really important to anchor teachers of, hey, this is a way you could ask fact and opinion. And if you want, you could just take just that question and make it as an exit slip. You could teach just source 1 and just that, if that makes sense. So this is just great resources. I do want to show you an example, because I was meeting with a social studies team yesterday, and the teachers were really excited because your teachers are typically pulling all of these sources and all of their artifacts. And we were looking at some 6 through 8, and at some of these upper grades, it is really robust, the amount of assessments that are already here. And so it's really important that they know about these. And the teacher were saying, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known. Let's see, did I open the teacher one? Because they have so many great graphics, maps, timelines. They could just be taking excerpts. So I really think your teachers will go wild about this, and it's getting the information out there that they know it's available, that they could be utilizing these resources to supplement their curriculum. And then the last thing, I'm going to go back to the DESE webpage, which all of you probably know how to get to, but I'm going to review it. I'm going to go back to this educators tab, and instead of hitting curriculum, I'm going to click on assessment. And if you look over to the right, it gives you, do you want to look at grade level assessments or end of course? So you can look at resources on both. I'm going to start with grade level. It's just taking a minute here. Better watch my, all right. So again, we've got some quick links for testing administrators here, but if you scroll down, you'll see these tabs, and you'll want to go to practice forms. And when you go there, what's nice is you have all of the old practice forms available. Now, one of the things I like, again, I like to always go to the scoring guide, because it'll easily tell you, as you're looking, again, as we're looking at the priority standards, which ones are covered. So you could go right to that item and look at sample items to help teachers really kind of get an idea of the clarity of the rigor that are asked. The other thing that we've got here are scoring guides, which are really imperative. And on some of the other sites, which I won't go into all of that today, but they have samples of scored writing from past tests that can really help your teachers calibrate on how they're scoring in narrative writing. They've got those rubrics. So all of these sites, I would just encourage you to keep going back to those content pages that we found on your curriculum pages, to make sure that teachers just know all of these great resources and that you could be integrating them into their PLCs. So the one last thing I do want to show you, and let's see if I can move your faces over here and make this a little bit bigger. So as we, oh gosh, I don't want to do that right now. As we talk about these different resources, I did want to show you an example of, as you're updating your pacing guides and your scope and sequences, you know, this is a template that I use with my schools, and is I would make sure that teachers are really clear about what their priorities are within their unit, what the supporting standards are with the MLS. But I hope you can see on here how within the scope and sequence, I would be hyperlinking these documents I showed with you today, so that teachers can easily see where they are. Now, so specifically, I've been working with the social studies team. So we're saying civilization, and look, we put under here, here's your MOBLOC assessments, because they're going to use this hyperlink and look through that list of like Mesopotamia, Kush, Egypt, the Fertile Crescent. They're going to hyperlink all the MOBLOCs that go with that unit right here. So as they get into their assessment building, everything is just hyperlinked for them, and they've kind of done that digging for themselves. And then it's even more powerful. One of the other things I'm passionate about as a curriculum consultant is not having a million folders where they save all their curriculum in, because then nobody can find anything and what's recent and what's been updated. If you can use a template similar to this, where you can really make it streamlined. On this document, we've even made another column that says assessments. So then when they piecemeal this, they have their assessments locked in here, their formative assessments. You just link everything to one spot and try to get rid of all those folders. It can be very helpful for teachers, especially if you have new people coming in. It just really clears up your curriculum. And so that is the end. Let me, again, here are the 5 things we went over, and I did it fast and furious, but making sure we know where the priority standards are, your MLS. Make sure you've been using the item specifications if you do assessment work. The biggest thing I wanted to highlight were these MOBLOC resources, especially for your social studies, science, and even math. And all the core contents is very helpful resources for them to be using. So at that, I thank you for your time today. If you do have questions after this webinar, please feel free to reach out and ask me questions. So ladies, I'm going to